If you want to learn more about this, you can go to SkydiVR.io. So when we get started here, I can kind of use the mouse to look around at the beautiful French mountains. I've got the drop zone in front of me, so when I start the simulation, I'm going to be in a run. I'm going to have a lot of ground speed headed straight back to the drop zone. So I think it's wise to do a turn away from the drop zone initially, at least, sort of across the wind line and up the jump run, but not directly up the jump run because of traffic concerns. You don't want people to free fall down through your airspace. So first things first, you get open, see if anybody's in front of you, am I pointed in a good direction, and then unstow your brakes. And then release, make sure it responds to the flare, looking forward again. Yep, I can see the flare works and the airspeed slows down. And now I'm going to look to my left. There's an altimeter check, 4700, do a turn. Does it turn? Yes. And does it stop? Looking the other way, is there any traffic? Turn. And stop. And observe the oversteer. How much does that parachute keep turning? So, like I said, there is some wind, and I'm at 4,000 feet, so I'm pretty close to the drop zone for my comfort, given this wind. So I'm going to face into the wind. I could have spotted a lot further out. And we have some tools, so especially without using the full VR, it's a little hard to see where you are on the ground exactly on the screen. So you can click the 2 key, and that's where I am, and also where I'm moving to. So if I turn a little bit right, it changes the direction of motion, and now I'm going straight into the wind. Now, if I feel the wind, if I just sort of sense the wind, it's coming from that angle. See those bubbles? So if those bubbles were actually motionless in the sky, of course drifting with the wind at the speed of the wind, that's where the relative wind comes from. That's my direction of motion. But if I project my landing point, right, so the computer can very easily do the math, and you can say, well, that's where I am, that's where I'm going to go. So facing into the wind, I have a worse glide ratio than the true glide ratio of my canopy, which is sort of quite a bit higher than the angle of the flight path relative to the Earth. So true glide, relative glide. Now let's do a 90-degree turn and observe how that affects everything. Alright, so right now I'm perpendicular to the wind line, and I can see I'm drifting to my right as I move forward. My direction of motion is going to lead me way over here to the right, so looking straight forward. I'm drifting to my right all the way to the river, but look at the bubbles, right? So the relative wind that I feel as I move through the air is very different from where I'm going to end up. So the green dot is basically the navigation, right? And the white bubbles is what I use to fly off of. That's what gives me the power to flare, the ability to develop, lift, and maneuver. So I'm in a pretty good location, upwind of the target. I can refresh my memory of the pattern, so I'm still, it's kind of on the near side of the play box, of the holding area. And at 1,900 feet, I think it's a good idea to go back over this way so that I can enter the pattern from the runway side, and I don't have to do any wild turns to get in there. So I'm over in a pretty good location. I can turn into the wind and look at the ground speed. Let's turn off the bubbles. And now I'm going to do a 180 back towards my pattern entry. And that's not an exact location, so let's get rid of it. I'm going to get a sense of, just from eyeballing it, 1,200 feet above the target. When I say above, I mean upwind of the target. I'm going to turn to my canopy so that I'm moving across the wind line. And if you notice, where my parachute is pointed is not exactly the same as my ground speed because I do have some wind. So 900 feet, I'm going to turn left towards my downwind, 90 degrees left, and line it up. You can see the smoke, that's very helpful. All the drop zones on SkydiVR have some smoke. Now, if I don't feel like I'm going to go far enough on this leg, I can always add brakes and let that parachute float. I have a tailwind, which means that going to brakes will extend my distance. All right. So getting down to 600, I'm going to slowly turn my canopy towards the base leg, and I'm going to look down to my left at the target. I don't want the target straight underneath me because my parachute will have, some glide. So I turned away just a little bit because I felt like I was a little high. Now I'm back on the center line at 300 feet, turning to final, and let's see where my accuracy is going to work out to be. That little guy on the ground is me in the future. So it's projecting where I would land. Make little corrections, looking forward. Breathing and relaxing, feet knees together, slightly bent under tension. Take up the tension in the brakes, and then flare. And there we go, 7 feet from the target. And we also can debrief using SkydiVR. Ronnie, the project lead, calls it SkydiVR, but I call it SkydiVR because I think most people get that easier, but whatever. So here's my pattern entry. I'm beginning my pre-base leg here at 1,200 feet, directly upwind to the target. I fly across the wind line. I fly downwind, making that turn somewhere around 900 feet. And then my turn at about 600 feet or so. And then 300 feet to final approach. And that brings me in to the target. Pretty cool, right? So I'm going to close this. And I thank you very much for joining. I hope you learned some stuff, and if you want to do a coaching session, I would love to do that with you. We do it on Zoom, and it's very, very cool. Okay, where are we going? Stay forward! That's what I'm talking about! Oh my God! Woo! You can hear the crowd in the distance. No way. That is awesome! 19 years old.